1 year to election, Kenyans don't want to see Rigathi Gachagua on the ballot paper. Why? As Siasa Hub family, we will analyze, we will share, we will also changia. You are very free to kunikosoa, you are very free kuacha ujumbe wako, pia kuniunga mkono ama kupeana maoni yako. You very free. Nobody will question you on that. So, why do Kenyans don't want to see Rigathi Gachagua's name on the ballot come 2027? 1 year to 2027, the campaigns are started, but the real war is now inside the camps. 1 year to the election, the dust has finally settled enough for us to see the battlefield. Forget the speeches for a moment. Forget who insulted who. Look at movement, reaction, and positioning. President William Ruto has clearly entered a campaign mode. Remember, the UDA ODM Naivasha retreat was not merely a government performance review. No, it was the beginning of constructing the 2027 incumbency network. One presidential candidate, government machinery, ODM corporations, and a common political message, and eventually the difficult question of zoning, coalition agreements, and the running mate factor. If you are very keen, when the president was addressing yesterday the Vision 2060, when the deputy president, Professor Kithure Kindiki, was speaking, actually the president alitoka nje akaenda. He wasn't comfortable when Professor was addressing the people. Why? I will let you know. Ruto's biggest advantage today is very simple. His side already knows who is the presidential candidate. But remember, the opposition already doesn't know. They have not preferred candidates so far 1 year to election. But something else happened this week. Remember, Rigathi Gachagua released his own counter report card against Ruto at 4, attacking taxation, the housing levy, hustler fund, insecurity, governance, and the promises that he said have not been fulfilled. Not even he said, unajua na mi najua, Ruto has given many thousands promises that he will never fulfill. Then, watch what happened. Actually, the government did not just laugh and move on. The board responded. Kimani Ichung'wah, Junet Mohammed, and the senior government officials, allied MPs, came out in numbers to respond to Gachagua. What does this tell you? Hii inasema nini? Whether one likes it or not, he has established himself, Rigathi Gachagua, as perhaps the opposition's most effective political pressure machinery against Ruto. When he speaks, the government responds. Now, Rigathi Gachagua is the talk of the town now. Akizungumza, wanajibu. But being the loudest attacker is not the same thing as being the strongest presidential candidate. That one should be taken into account. Kwamba kusungumza sana kwa Rigathi Gachagua doesn't mean that he has now been accepted. No. That is a very different thing. And that is where today's opposition meeting becomes important. Remember, yesterday they met. Why did they meet? I will let you know. After several days of tension involving Gachagua, Fred Matiang'i, Peter Munya, Justin Muturi, and others, Martha Karua helped bring the opposition players back around one table. By the way, it was the energy of Martha Karua. And that photograph that you saw, it was very important. It must be not misunderstood. It was not a wedding. It was a ceasefire on the opposition's side. The disagreement has not disappeared. Matiang'i has rejected suggestions that he is a Ruto mole. Gachagua's side has questioned the commitment of some opposition figures. Others have accused Gachagua of attempting to become the political landlord of the opposition, particularly from Mount Kenya region. What appears to have changed is the language. Instead of everyone demanding ownership of the vehicle, they are again discussing how eventually to produce a driver, the flag bearer. And that is a progress. Meanwhile, another political lane is emerging around younger and reform-oriented politicians like Caleb Amisi of People's Renaissance Movement, the presence of figures such as Martha Karua, David Maraga, and Clovis Marara. And actually, the continuing conversation around Edwin Sifuna. Remember, Edwin Sifuna has taken over. The Linda Mwananchi has taken over. Suggests that 2027 may not simply become Ruto versus the traditional opposition. No, it may shape it. They may be a third constituency forming, the reform voter who dislikes the government but also tried to recycle the opposition. You know, unaweza kuwa unachukia serikali but pia the option is not that good. Then there is Mount Kenya. Remember, anyone is still describing Mount Kenya simply as Ruto versus Rigathi is missing the point here. There is UDA, Kindiki incumbents in the mountain. There is Gachagua DCP mobilization, and there remains the Jubilee and Uhuru political tradition, which Matiang'i and others may potentially speak to without necessarily surrendering to either Ruto or Gachagua. That is why this election can yet be reduced to kingpins. The mountain itself is negotiating. So 1 year out, my assignment is this. Ruto has a better organized machine. Gachagua currently has one of the strongest opposition attack machines. Matiang'i remains a serious presidential possibility. Kalonzo remains politically important. Sifuna represents a different generational conversation. That is why he will never be the president, but the deputy. And the opposition still has not answered the most dangerous question. Who carries the flag? That is the most important question. This is where the next phase begins. The opposition does not necessarily need everybody to love one another. No, it needs something much harder. A credible formula that really allows everybody to lose the nomination without destroying the coalition. Because choosing a candidate is easy. Getting the people who lose to remain inside the vehicle is the most difficult thing. Wale ambao wataachwa nje ndio itakuwa ngumu zaidi. But now, where would they go? That is another question. But because 1 year to the election, Ruto has already chosen his battlefield. The opposition has assembled the generals. Now we wait to see whether they will choose one commander or spend the remaining years fighting over the steering wheel while the incumbent drives away. Otherwise, from today, don't only watch the speeches. Watch who meets who responds to who stops attacking who, where governors begin moving, and which politician suddenly become very quiet. This is where the real 2027 story will begin and will be rewritten. But just a question to you, a simple question. What do you think? Should the opposition choose its presidential candidate now or wait until closure of the election? Unaona wangoje mpaka mwezi wa 5 next year ama wachoose sasa hivi Wakenya wakuwe wakijua? What is your take on that? What is your take on that? Let me know.